Hello and welcome to Studio RC, an encouragement for your recovery and your faith. My name is Max, and I am an alcoholic. We're starting a new series, and our podcasts are where faith and recovery meet, one story at a time. And so our new series is going to be called One Story at a Time, where Jesus' stories meet our struggles. Because that's honestly what it's all about. Jesus told parables or stories to real people with real problems. And they weren't cleaned up first. He told stories about lost things, broken things, stubborn people, big messes, surprise grace, and second chances. Sounds a lot like recovery. Each week during this series, we're going to take one of Jesus' parables, dig in. We're going to dive right on in. We'll explore how it speaks directly to the realities of addiction, relapse, spiritual growth, humility, and ultimately hope. We'll connect his words to the 12 steps, to insights from the big book, and to the lived experience of this messy, beautiful journey that we're on. You'll hear stories of sheep that wander and seeds that grow and gifts buried and rediscovered, houses shaken and rebuilt, and yes, prodigal sons and daughters who stumble home only to be welcomed with open arms. These aren't just ancient fables. These are spiritual survival tools, and they still work, and they still speak to us in a powerful way. So whether you're just beginning your recovery journey, sponsoring someone, or carrying a really heavy burden, or maybe you're just curious of what Jesus might have to say to people like us, just know this space, this series, it's for you. So grab a notebook, take a breath, lean in. Let's listen to his story and see what it stirs up in yours. One story at a time. Hello, and episode 4 begins right now. The talent and using your gifts as given by God. Let me ask, have you ever thought, or have you ever looked at your life and been like, who am I to help anyone? Or I've messed up so much. How can I ever be useful? Or one that I struggled with, I was waiting for someone to tap me on the shoulder, throughout early recovery and say, we know what you did. Maybe you've even assumed like someone else is more qualified or more spiritual or more ready. And probably, honestly, there's always someone who's more qualified, more spiritual, or more ready. So you're probably right on that front. But that doesn't discount us. Jesus' parable of the talents, it tells a different story. In God's economy, what matters most isn't how much we've been given, but what we do with it. Whether we've got 5 talents or 1, whether we've been sober 5 years or 5 days, God invites us to use our lives to serve others and to glorify him. That includes our pain, our past, and even our imperfections. That's one of the reasons it says we will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. Why? Because it becomes an asset, because God has redeemed it. In this episode, we're going to explore how Jesus' parable of the talents invites us to use our gifts, our experiences, even our scars to serve others and to honor God, especially in recovery. Because the life you live after the pain might be the greatest gift you have. So we're going to read from Matthew 25, verses 14 through 30. Again, a little bit of a longer passage. It's a powerful story, and it really, when heard in full, it's a powerful thing. So listen, listen to the words of this parable from Matthew 25, 14 through 30, and then we'll reflect and see some personal application. Again, this is going to be Matthew 25, 14 through 30. The parable, sometimes it's called the parable of the talents, the parable of the bags of gold, depending on your translation, but here goes. Jesus teaches, again, it will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted his wealth to them. To one he gave 5 bags of gold, to another 2 bags, and to another 1 bag, each according to his ability. Then he went on his journey. The man who had received 5 bags of gold went at once and put the money to work and gained 5 bags more. So also the one with 2 bags of gold gained 2 more. But the man who received 1 bag went off, dug a hole in the ground, and hid his master's money. After a long time, the master of those servants returned and settled accounts with them. The man who had received 5 bags of gold brought the other 5. Master, he said, you entrusted me with 5 bags of gold. See, I've gained 5 more. His master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. His master replied, the man with 2 bags of gold also came. Master, he said, you entrusted me with 2 bags of gold, and see, I've gained 2 more. His master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. Then the man who received 1 bag of gold came. Master, he said, I knew that you are a hard man, harvesting where you had not sown and gathering where you had not scattered seed. So I was afraid and went out and hid your gold in the ground. See, here is what belongs to you. His master replied, you wicked, lazy servant. So you knew that I harvest where I have not sown and gather where I have not scattered seed. Well, then you should have put my money on deposit with the bankers, so that when I returned, I would have received at least back with interest. So take the bag of gold from him and give it to the one who has 10 bags. Whoever has will be given more, and they will have an abundance. Whoever does not have, even what they have will be taken from them. And throw that worthless servant outside into the darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Woo! That's a humdinger. Well done, good and faithful servant. That we hear that refrain. That's the thing we want to hear when all is said and done, that God says, well done, good and faithful servant. A master goes on a journey and entrusts his servants with talents. Talents is also a reference to a particular type of money. And it was a significant amount of money in the ancient world. One receives 5 talents, another 2, and another 1. The first 2 put theirs to work and doubled what they were given. And the last one hides his out of fear. And when the master returns, he praises the faithful one, but rebukes the one who buried his treasure, his gift. You wicked, lazy servant. You should have put my money at least in the bank on deposit, because at least then you would have had interest. So the lesson is clear. Gifts are meant to be used, not buried. God expects us to take what he's entrusted to us and multiply it for his kingdom. And that includes our stories, our recovery, our lives. God doesn't bless fearful inaction. He honors faithful risk. The kingdom grows when we invest what we've been given, not when we bury it. The parable comes near the end of Jesus' public teaching, and it's in a section about living in readiness for his return. But readiness doesn't mean waiting passively. It means stewardship, responsibility, using what you have been given. In biblical terms, a talent is both a unit of currency, but it's a symbol of God-given opportunity. Jesus expands its meaning here. Talents represent anything that God entrusts to you. Our time, our gifts, our influence, our stories. Jesus described a wealthy master entrusting his servant with various talents. A talent in Jesus' day equaled about 20 years of wages. Like, that's significant. It's an immense responsibility. Servant 1 receives 5 talents, he doubles it. Servant 2 receives 2 talents, he doubles it. Servant 3 receives 1 talent and buries it. At first glance, the third servant seems lazy, fearful, or even defiant. The servant who buries his talent acts out of fear. Maybe his image of the master is distorted. He views him as harsh and punishing. Fear paralyzes him. Now, when I read this when I was younger, when I was a child growing up, I most related to the third servant. So I want to take a little bit longer of a look. It's easy to dismiss the third servant, but I think many of us may relate to the third servant better than we do the first and second. So I want to take a little bit more of a compassionate, maybe even a realistic look at why he may have acted that way, especially in light of how many in recovery relate to fear, shame, and performance pressure. I know that, like, when I read this, I thought, oh, he's done good. He's protected what the master has given him. And I think growing up and in early recovery, I was riddled with fear. I was always afraid of the outcome and what the outcome would mean. Like, I was afraid of good outcomes and bad outcomes. I was afraid of being successful and being a failure. It didn't matter. I had a lot of fear. And so when I read this, I was like, no, I'm with the third guy. Bury it. Make sure it's safe. But God had a different understanding. But why did the third servant bury his talent? Maybe we can relate to this. Maybe one of the reasons was fear of failure or perfectionism. I relate to that. The third servant says clearly, I was afraid, and I went and hid your talent in the ground. I went and hid your gold in the ground. He may not have been lazy. He may have just been paralyzed by performance anxiety. What if he tried and failed? What if he lost everything? I can so relate to that. One of the things that I wrestled with, especially in early recovery, because of my inactivity, sometimes people would call me lazy, and it was such a word curse on me. I never felt lazy. I felt like I worked hard. But I was scared. Today I don't live that way. Thankfully, I have freedom. But at the time, if I gave everything I could and I fell short, what would that mean? Like, what if I tried hard and I didn't succeed? Sometimes it was easier to not try and just fail and say, well, if I had tried. So there's this fear of failure. In ancient culture, failure with entrusted wealth could bring shame, ruin, or punishment. I don't know if that's quite the same today, maybe, but we definitely will heap it on ourselves for sure. In recovery, perfectionism often whispers, if I can't do it perfectly, why should I try at all? Like, I had a shaky day today. I might as well just drink or use. I mean, it wasn't perfect. Rather than I got through the day. There's a shift that needs to take place. A shift that helps us to better view the wins. Because if it wasn't perfect, it was always a loss for a perfectionist. And now the perfect isn't what the win is. So maybe another thought is the servant had a skewed view of the master. The servant says, I knew you to be a hard man. His perception of the master was one of harshness and severity. That distorted belief shaped his entire response. In both theology and recovery, what you believe about God or your higher power shapes how you live. If you believe he's waiting to punish you for mistakes, you're going to live defensively. If you believe he's gracious, you'll live boldly. If you grew up with a gotcha God, God's always watching. He'll see what you did. He'll see that you came up short. He'll see that you didn't do that perfect. He'll see. It's going to make it's, how can we be anything but defensive and hesitant? If we believe that God is gracious, I like to, when I identify myself, I say, hi, my name is Max, I'm an alcoholic. I am sober today only by the grace of God and the fellowship of the recovery. But that graciousness has bought me freedom. God's love has bought me freedom so that I don't act out of fear, because part of it, if you think love is based on perfection, they'll love me only if. God will only love me if. My partner, my children, my employer will only love me if I'm perfect. That's a hard way to live. But when you're loved, there's this freedom. It's almost like I go from walking on a tightrope out of fear, like I could fall at any moment, to I have this netting under me that I can run down the tightrope and be okay. Because even if I fall, I'm going to be caught by this like netting of love. And so the love is not based on my performance, which allows me to try things. Because even if I fail or fall short, it's going to be okay. And so, I think that there's such freedom in that. That is awesome. The third thing that the servant might have been, he might have just been feeling less than, which I think we struggle with. The first two servants were given more. Possibly the third felt inferior. As addicts and alcoholics, we always felt like we were underappreciated and people didn't understand or give us our due. Maybe he thought, why bother? I only got one. Maybe this is envy mixed with discouragement. What some in recovery call comparing your insides to other people's outsides. I know that the act of comparison, I'm always losing, because I always compare how I'm feeling to where I see how other people are doing. Why does that person look like they're succeeding and I feel so crummy on the inside? When I start to compare, I always lose in the battle of comparison. And so he might have started comparing himself to the others. In meetings, people sometimes think, I haven't been sober long enough, or my story isn't big enough to help anyone. Like they want the sexy. I didn't get any DUIs. I didn't do that. Praise God if that's the case. But your one talent may be someone else's lifeline. So don't ever despise or talk down about that. Another thing that the servant might have struggled with was just a lack of trust in himself. The servant might not have lacked trust in the master as much as himself. He may have thought, I can't handle this responsibility. What if I blow it? He hid the talent out of self-protection, not out of spite. Trauma, shame, early wounds often cause people to shrink from responsibility because they were never told that what they were capable of or that they had value. Stewardship is about faith, not fear. This parable isn't ultimately about ROI, return on investment. It's about faithfulness with what we've been given. The master never demands equal results, only that each servant would act and trust. Well done, good and faithful servant. Not well done, productive and successful servant. Good and faithful servant. God's economy values effort, motivated by trust, not outcomes rooted in fear. And I think of the ninth step. We are called to make amends to people. We make amends, again, partly so that our past becomes an asset, partly so that we clean our side of the street. But if someone doesn't receive our amends, it doesn't mean that it's no less successful. If we've made the amends and it's not received, it still counts as making our amends. Like we've made the effort, and it's about effort, not necessarily about outcome. Even small acts done in faith have eternal worth. Jesus' vision is one of courageous stewardship. The faithful servant took risks. They didn't cling, they invested. This parable invites us to examine not only our use of gifts, but our view of the giver. Is God harsh and demanding, or generous and trustworthy? In recovery, our stories, our wounds, our hard-won lessons become some of the greatest tools for helping others. Step 12 reminds us, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we've tried to carry this message. Carrying the message, the big book adds, assuming we're spiritually fit, we can do all sorts of things alcoholics are not supposed to do. Your job now is to be at the place where you may be of maximum helpfulness to others. That's the recovery version of well done, good and faithful servant. You may not think of your recovery as a talent, but it is. And hiding your story out of fear, shame, or insecurity is burying it. But when we share our experience, strength, and hope, we multiply it. We become a lifeline for others. There's so many examples of how we have talents in recovery: listening without judgment, sponsorship, speaking at meeting, hospitality, making coffee, setting up chairs, artistic gifts, maybe writing, music, design, all to carry the message, vulnerability and honest about past mistakes. Burying our stories out of shame helps no one. But when we risk sharing them, they can spark hope in somebody else. We will not regret the past, nor wish to shut the door on it. No matter how far down the scales we have gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others because it's been redeemed. Let me pose these questions to consider. Are you afraid of failing spiritually or in service? The question is why, if you are. Do you trust God, that God can use even your smallest gifts? Is our picture of God more harsh master or loving father? Where have I been burying something that he's asked me to use? Maybe he wants you to write a book, start a company, go back to school. I don't know, but what is it that you've been burying? Who might benefit if you unearthed that talent? A man once shared at a meeting, "For years I thought my story disqualified me. Turns out it's my greatest credential. It's why people listen when I speak." God doesn't compare our gifts. He asks us to be faithful with what we have. If it doesn't have to be flashy, it just has to be faithful. You don't have to fix everyone, but you do have to show up. Offer what you have and trust that God will multiply it. Faithfulness beats flashiness every time. God doesn't expect perfection. He desires participation. If you've buried your gift out of fear, it's not too late. Unearth it. Try again. Step forward, however imperfectly. God is the kind of master who delights when we try, celebrates when we risk, and rejoices when we share. Your story, even our scars, are kingdom currency. God doesn't compare, he calls. And when we risk serving with what we've been given, even if it's small, he multiplies it. In Matthew 25:29, to those who use well what they are given, even more will be given. You have been given something. Now go and use it. All right, that concludes this episode. Next, we're going to move from the gifts to foundations. In the parable of the two houses, Jesus reminds us that storms will come, and what we build our lives on matters. We'll talk about surrender, spiritual structure, and the difference between self-will and God's will when the wind starts to blow. We'll see you next time. One story at a time, where Jesus' stories meets our struggles. Thanks for spending time with us here at Studio RC for another episode in this series on parables. And, Studio RC is where we believe recovery and faith, they don't have to compete. They actually complement one another. You've been listening to One Story at a Time, where Jesus' parable speaks directly into the mess and the miracle of recovery. Maybe today's story stirred something in you. Maybe it brought some comfort, or maybe conviction, or just the reminder that you're not walking this road alone. Jesus' parables are so powerful. Maybe it made you feel loved. Maybe it made you feel seen. Jesus had a way of sharing the message through stories. If you heard something that made you think of a friend, a sponsee, or someone who's been struggling, make sure you share this episode, because stories, they're meant to be passed on, especially stories that save, stories that restore, stories that encourage. And if you're the one who's been drifting or hiding or hanging on by a thread, hear this. It's not too late. There's always a way back. God's not done telling your story. So one of the things that we encourage you to do, make sure that you like, you subscribe, you follow, you share Studio RC, and so that we can have a bigger footprint and more people can be encouraged and see what's going on here at Recovery Church and be encouraged in their recovery and their faith. And take this opportunity to do exactly that. You can also follow us on social media, or even visit us at www.recovery.church. Recovery.church. I know, I love that. You can find a local campus or more resources to help support your journey on our website. Well, until next time, remember, we encourage you, stay honest, stay connected, stay in the story, because God's still writing one story at a time. Remember, Recovery Church, 12 steps, one goal. God bless, and we'll see you next time.